Welcome to the in-between,
where shift happens,
the moment between where we are
and where we are going.
We will ask all the questions,
maybe find some answers,
and generally work at being okay.
In the mystery of the in-between.
And today we are talking about information overload, managing the quickening of modern stress. And buckle up, y'all, because I think we've been trying to film this episode for like 3 weeks, and there's been so much going on that we haven't even been able to get to it. And because there's that much, I feel like there's that much going on, and not just like for me or for you.
Right.
It feels like for
everybody.
Like everybody I know is like so in over their head with life, just like lifing all over the place.
Yeah.
And it just seems, I don't know, kind of crazy. So
overload.
I have no idea where this is going to go today. We're going to find out, but I thought
it may not go anywhere, actually.
Literally, that might just be the conversation is just repeating this same thing over and over for 20 minutes. But I think it's important just to even have the place to like, hey, y'all, this is a real thing. You're not crazy. Like, life is, I don't know, whatever it's doing it a lot, and it's doing it all over the place. And it is, I mean, I think it is for just about everybody. So I think we'll get into some of that, probably, maybe. We'll see. This is, by the way, season 3. Welcome to season 3.
Yay, yes.
Yeah, how exciting is that? If you have never tuned into the in-between where shift happens before, the way this works is one of us shows up with questions and a topic to ask the other one, and they know nothing of the questions. They know the topic. We've agreed on a topic. So I have brought questions today. Ryan does not know the questions. And
I don't care. I really don't care, actually.
Yeah. Today, who cares? Exactly. And it's just kind of to have that really raw conversation, to be in the in-between, right? To be in that space where we don't know. And today we don't care. Whatever. It's just going to be what it is and go where it goes. So, that's how this is going to go. It's usually pretty fun. And sometimes it's even deep and expansive and mind-bending and opening and all of the things.
All the things.
We'll see what happens. So, I know because of conversations that you and I have had that this topic is something that, to me, it feels like it's been building for like a couple of years already.
Yeah.
Where like everybody's got stuff going on kind of all the time, and it seems to be like quickening, like the stress and overwhelm is picking up pace. It's happening more frequently. Like life events seem to just be occurring like on top of each other, whereas before maybe there used to be space or at least it seemed like there used to be space in between things. And so I know we've talked a lot about this just kind of between the two of us, and what I have been noticing just with friends and colleagues and whatnot, that like everybody is just going through more and more and more. And I don't know that we necessarily have been given like the tools or the mechanisms or even just like the cognitive recognition to know how to maneuver this. And so like everybody just seems totally burnt out. And differently now than like 2020, I thought I was burnt out. This is like a totally new version of that. So I don't know. Let's just start. Like, what has this been like for you? What's your experience with this information overload, burnout, overwhelm thing that's going on? What's life like? How are you doing?
How am I doing? It's interesting because I had this experience lately of like, wow, I used to be able to manage so much more than I'm managing now. What is going on? And I think like two things. I think it's just like the cumulative layer of like stress and overwhelm, burnout. I think it's just cumulative. And now I feel like I'm like reaping some of the impact of like years of that. Yeah. And also I feel like I'm more sensitive to it now, because trying to like peel back the layers of how things have always done, how I've always operated, how I've always, created bandwidth when I didn't have it
We didn't have
enough, right? And so now I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do that shit. No, we're going to work within the bandwidth that we have.
which
So I
is like
become, yeah.
minimal.
So I become like more like protective of my boundaries, protective of my bandwidth.
Yeah.
And so I had this realization of, oh wow, I can't do the things I used to do. But it's not because I can't do the things I used to do, it's because how I used to do them was well beyond my bandwidth. And now I'm reaping the consequences of that. Kind of like when you have sleep debt, when you don't sleep that
I was just thinking that
seven
same
hours,
exact
right? You have
thing.
sleep
Yep.
debt. So
Yep.
now it's like this burnout debt. I mean, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I have, I'm overdrawn in my bank, basically, is what it feels like. And so I think
Yeah.
too, we're so inundated with like information more so than maybe we have been in the past. And I
Yeah.
think, that's good in some ways for connection, but also it's like just this constant flow of information and expectations.
Yeah.
And our brains aren't wired in this current evolution
Yeah.
of them to be able to handle and process. And that just for me lately, like I woke up this morning, like I'm at 0%. I have 0% to give today in
Yeah.
a day that is requiring me to give more than 0%, right? I'm doing that
Right.
right now, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, wow, what do we do?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm at that point to just like, what do we do to manage this?
Yeah.
And then what do we do
Because
to
it can't keep
right,
going.
right? What do I do to manage my own? And then what do I do? How do I shift how I interact with others that frees them to be able to take the space and use the bandwidth that they need, right? Because we can't like protect our own bandwidth and then expect other folks to give beyond, right?
Right.
And so
Right.
it's like, how do we begin to move in the world that we're all supporting each other in that? And
Yeah.
so I think
Yeah.
that's a long answer to where I am today. But
I yeah.
it's like all those things.
I get it. I get it. Yeah. It it's funny. So you mentioned sleep debt. It's like there's sleep debt, and then I think there's sleep bankruptcy,
Yeah.
where there's like no, we're so far into the debt that it's like, what else do you do, right? And I think with this, it's like the equivalent. If there's stress debt, we're all now at stress bankruptcy,
Oh yeah.
like overwhelmed bankruptcy, like right, like there's literally like it's not that we're in debt that we can like make up for it. We're like so far past
Which is
what
so interesting
really
because
works.
I have right now the least stressful set of expectations job that I have ever
Yeah.
had in my entire life, right? I have worked in very high expectation stress sort of
Yeah.
arenas and
Yeah.
like this and like, wow, how did I survive? And the thing is, I was until I didn't. And we're in the didn't now, right? We're in the like, oh,
That's so, I don't know if y'all watching or listening know this, but Ryan and I usually share like one brain cell.
today I don't know. It's maybe a half a brain cell.
But it's funny. It's so funny, guys. I was literally just thinking that, like, yeah, I don't know. It worked until it didn't, and I mean, not that it ever really worked, but like,
Right. We didn't see the effects of it not
yeah,
working.
my experience of this in the past is very much that same thing, where like super stressful situations, working with like in super bad relationships, just all kinds of weird shit that I have done a lot of work for myself to create an environment to, I mean, to almost create the privilege to have the environment where I don't have those situations.
Yeah.
And yes, very much have the least stressful job I think I've ever had, the least stressful work. And yet, like, it just compiles like all of this life stuff on top of that it has never, like, for me, has never happened in this way before.
Yeah.
And it's just so, I don't know, like overwhelming is not even quite the right word, right? Like it's kind of mind-boggling to really look at, like to try and even just take a step outside of for a moment and look at objectively and like understand. I don't know. It feels like there's family things going on and life things going on and presidential elections going on and wars going on that all used to happen like I don't know, like a thing would happen that was the only thing happening that really like
Yeah.
took up that extra little extra bandwidth, and so you focus on it and you process it, or you pack it away and process it later or whatever, and then there was maybe a little bit of time, and then while like some life is life, and so those things happen, right? But it just, I mean, it really just feels like one thing happens, I barely start to process the fact that that thing happened,
And
you
that's
know
another. Yeah.
and then it's another thing and another, and I'm trying not to get into the details of sharing like other people's business, so this is
Right.
a little vague, but um yeah, I mean, it really is like this family thing happened, and then that work thing that was a little weird happened, but because the family thing was happening in the first place, that got exacerbated at work and was worse, and then this other thing, I mean, it just left and right and left, and I was like, oh my god, like when friends of ours who like this death, and then that loss of job, and then this death, and then that illness, and this
Yeah.
hospitalization, and you're like, oh my god,
In like a
how
2 weeks time, right? It's
yeah,
like for
yeah,
yeah.
right, not, we're not talking like 6 months or a year, in like 2 weeks.
Well, I think too, what adds to this, and I think this is like on 2 levels, but I think it's working the same way, not only like, societally, but also like even in spiritual communities, or in like people who are in a spiritual path, or, those sort of journey, all the things, right? Is that there is a sense of, and maybe I'm just speaking from my own whatever, but there's a sense of shame when you struggle with dealing with
Yeah,
like life experiences. For me, it feels like shame. Like, wow, I should be whatever, whatever,
yeah,
whatever. Or like, if
yeah,
these people only knew, I show up to this meeting and I am on it and in this whatever. But in the meantime, they don't know that when I get off of this meeting, I am like toast for the rest of the day,
yeah,
like in the bed, because I am so overwhelmed with everything that my body physically feels this way.
yeah,
And so it's like, I think there's a sense of shame because there's this idea that we are supposed to deal with stress, or we're
yeah,
supposed, this is, if we are cracking, whatever that looks like, under pressure, then we're not doing it right, or we're weak, or whatever.
yeah,
Not spiritual enough, or not thinking the right thing, or reading the right stuff, or
yeah,
praying the right, all the things. And so,
yep, yep,
and then that just circles back. And so the impact of shame on our bodies, mentally, physically, emotionally, it adds to it. And it just perpetuates
yeah,
this idea that whatever we are is not enough,
yep,
and that
yep,
wherever we are, it should be more, right? It's this idea, this perpetual, we have to be always constantly growing and evolving.
yeah,
Yeah, and
yep,
right?
yep, yep,
Sometimes we can just rest and say, wow, whew, let me just breathe for a minute, right? And so I think that
yeah,
that adds to it, at least for me, especially in places of leadership, or places of influence that I have in my life. Then you have to like show up in this way.
yeah.
Meanwhile, like you're crippled for the weekend, in just everything, emotionally, physically, all that, trying
That,
to recover just to start and do it all again
to
next
do
week.
it all, yeah, yeah. And I think that's probably for me the most important part about even just having this conversation, like even just talking about this topic, because societally, I think we have this like default understanding, like something feels wrong,
Yeah,
and we are taught, like when you're a child, your parent, guardian, the school, whoever, like they are the authority figure, and so they are right. And so if something's wrong, well, that means I'm wrong, right? Like that's like a super common, I don't know, pattern or whatever. Like that's
right.
just kind of how that works, right? And I think that plays out into adulthood too. Like until we take the time to inspect the thing that feels wrong, like our brains just assume like something feels wrong and it must be me. Like I must not be doing enough or capable of enough, or
Yeah,
like this is how it's always been. Everyone's always done it. Like until we take the time to collectively break down, like, no, this is not working, and it's not you. It's not you,
yeah,
right? It's not me. It's not you, Ryan. It's not you listening or watching, right? Like the thing that's wrong is not us. It's not that we can't, it's that we're not meant to,
Right.
right?
Right.
That we are being expected to XYZ, to do
Yeah.
way more than we were made for, way more than we're capable of. Like the capitalistic mentality, the idea that like we've been able through technology, we've been able to accomplish like 4 times more in the 40-hour work week than when the 40-hour work week started. And because of technology, we've been able to produce like 8 times more than that. So like product or whatever, I don't know if those are the exact numbers, whatever the numbers are, it's something like ridiculous. So we're producing like, tenfold over what was being produced however many decades ago. And yet the expectation is still the same on us. So it's like,
Yeah.
you still need to be putting in all of that. You're 100%. If you could do 100% every day, you need to be giving 100% to this job, to this work every day. It's like, well, all right, but if I put in 100% in work, which seems insane to me at this point anyway, what about like family, eating,
Relationship,
sleeping,
like all
taking
the
care of
things, right?
yourself,
Yeah.
anything else is
And
already
and we're
outside of that
all
10%.
and we're all like active in this, responsible for this cycle because
Yeah,
we expect others to do that. Like in
yeah,
our places
yeah,
of privilege or places of power, the places that we have, whether it be going to a restaurant expecting blah 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 blah, right? Or doing this, or if we have people that we that work, for us or with it, like expecting these sorts of things. And it's like, yeah, at some point it has to shift on both
yeah,
ends,
yeah,
not only our expectation of others, but our expectation of ourselves. And once we do that, then it creates this kind of cycle of healing and shifting.
yeah,
Because when I can honor boundaries, honor people's no's, right?
yep,
Then, or honor people's, I can't do that right now, or I don't have the bandwidth for that right now. Um, I've tried to get myself in that mode by when I ask someone to do something, whether it's something work related or even in relationships. Like, do you have the bandwidth? Do you have the bandwidth for this conversation right now? Do you have the bandwidth to
yeah, yeah,
help me with this project right now? This is something that we're looking to do. Do you have the bandwidth, or is there a way that we can split some of this with other folks?
yeah,
So we have little tiny bandwidths, and we all work together to get this thing accomplished or whatever. So it's like training myself to work within my own bandwidth and then training others to be like, oh, wait, okay. And I had a conversation with someone the other day that I asked them if they had the bandwidth for this particular thing. And they're like, no, but I'll create some. I'm like, no, that's not the question.
That's
Not
not how that works.
creating
Sorry.
bandwidth, right? This idea, there's not creating bandwidth,
Yeah,
right? Now we can maybe shift how our things we're putting our focus on, but you can't create bandwidth. You either have it or you don't,
or you
and there's
don't.
no judgment around that. And
But
so it's
that's the thing is, I think there always has been.
yes,
There
yes. And I
always
think,
has been.
and so for me, it's like in the spaces where I can encourage that in others, maybe they replicate that language in the people that
Yeah.
they work with. So it's like
Yep.
the cyclical effect.
Yeah. So, uh, yeah, that was going to be one of my questions. So it's kind of a two-part thing. Like, what are some real-time coping mechanisms we can use right now? And I say coping mechanisms because I think it's like when we're in overwhelmed bankruptcy,
Mhm.
we do need to do like immediate things I can do right now to cope with what's going on to
Yeah.
get through it.
Yeah.
But then there's also like long-term strategies that as individuals and as groups and collectively, like what do we need to be looking at doing to actually make shift and change? And so it's, you sound like you kind of started talking a little about coping mechanisms already. Like, oh, I can start changing my language. And I think
Yeah.
that's a big one. Are there, what other ways have you found to like, what are you doing right now
Yeah.
to like, I
Yes.
can't. And so I'm not going to, and this is how I'm dealing with it.
I'm walking a lot. And what I do is I try to like create space for breaks during the day and then not fill it with more stuff. So like
Uh,
if I have breaks in between projects or in between meetings with folks, or in between, things that I'm doing, to have like, you have like that 30 minutes before the next meeting. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, well, I'll just work on some emails in between to the next meeting. Well, no, if I know the next meeting is going to be something that is a lot of mental energy, emotional energy that I have to exert, I'm going to take that 30 minutes. I'm going to walk outside. I'm going to stretch. I'm going to drink some water, eat a snack, pet the dog, go weed the garden. Like those things that I know
Yeah.
calm my nervous system and regulate that a little bit. That way, when I enter that meeting, then I have refreshed myself enough that I'm able to participate in that meeting, and I'm not showing up on fumes. Right.
Yeah.
I may be a quarter of a tank, but I'm not on fumes. Right. And so it's like, and so I try to do that throughout the day. I say no a lot, or say, I can't do that today, but maybe I could do it next week. Right. I say that a lot. I try not to smash a lot of things in the day. I try to be mindful of the energy that certain interactions and projects are going to take. And then I kind of coordinate based on that.
Yeah.
So it's really just managing, my energy levels. Yeah, and I think also it helps for me, it's helped to talk to other people. Like, am I the only one that is like, right? And so, I mean, even conversations that you and I have had, like offline from this, has been rejuvenative in the fact of like, oh, I was panicking, thinking something was wrong with me because I can't, right?
Yeah.
And so that also kind of calms the nervous system of like, oh, okay, this is just something that's happening with a lot of folks now. And so
Yeah.
for me, those are some things that have been helpful.
I think that that's the dangerous spiral of it, right? Is like in these emotionally draining states, it's really easy to go into those like, oh my God, I said no to that person and I can't do this thing. And now they're going to think whatever of me. And so, oh,
Never have another opportunity again, right?
yeah. Right.
FOMO.
And so we end up like draining more energy, spiraling about it, I think.
Yeah.
So there's it's just like they're saying no, but there's also like saying no and being okay with it. And I think that's like, it takes practice just to be able to say, no, I can't do that right now, or I don't have the bandwidth to do that right now. Or, maybe you're not really in a position to say no to management. And it's like, okay,
Right.
I'll add that to my list. Can you help me manage my priorities? What would you like me to get done first? Like
Right.
that in and of itself is a practice to be able to kind of like be gutsy enough to actually say. But then I think there's also the practice of like, then not beating the crap out of yourself for doing it.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job because I just asked my manager to help me manage my priorities.
Right.
Because I think that's a very real thing that we do as people.
Yeah.
Like I don't know. It's really easy to spiral for a lot of people. It's really easy to spiral on those kind of thoughts. And then that ends up wasting the same or more energy than just trying to muck your way through the thing. I mean, it just leads to more of that bankruptcy, I think. But yeah, those are really powerful practices though, when you can do them. Just being aware of your own resources, because like what's in the 4 agreements, one of the agreements is always do your best. And I think out of context that sounds like always do 110%. Like that's a very like American way.
Right.
110%. No,
America.
What America. But what that really means is if today you only have 35%,
Yeah.
that's your 100% for today. 100% for everything. Not 100% for
one thing.
Yeah. 100% for the whole day. You have 35% of your tank full. That's your whole day's worth, right? And so I know for me, the last couple of years have been really about just recognizing my own needs, my own boundaries, and like, oh, I generally have this much space or time for this activity, and so it's like it looks like time blocking, but the weirdest part about it for me is I had no boundaries before that.
Yeah.
And so I would just go, crash. And so I never hit up against any boundaries until I crashed. And then I
Yeah.
would get up and do it again. But now it's like I'm constantly bumping up against my own boundaries. And that
Mm,
getting used to that, I feel like, is also
yeah. That's
equally as
challenging.
exhausting, because it's like having to figure out how to constantly manage the boundaries that
And
I
hold them
it's not
tight.
like
Yeah.
I've created. It's there. These are the boundaries that just like exist that I had just ignored
Mhm.
for 30 whatever years of my life that now can't be ignored anymore. And it's like, oh, how do I
Yeah.
develop the practice of just managing the boundaries? I think even that can be an accumulative downward spiral
Oh,
into this
yeah, for
also.
sure.
So developing that practice has been really important for me too. And I think that adds, I think collectively that
Mhm.
has added to this perception of speeding up, because
Mhm.
I think societally, like, no boundaries, fake facade, everything's fine, no boundaries, and we're just gonna push ahead pretending that everything's great.
Right.
And now, I think especially since 2020, there's been a lot of push for healthier relationships between people, for yourself, a healthier relationship with yourself, a healthier relationship with life. Um, how we parent, how we work, how we do all of these things have been getting reevaluated. And so I think boundaries are a much more common thing, but I don't know that we're talking about the practice of experiencing our own boundaries. Like boundaries
Yeah.
are like, I think kind of the common mainstream is like, boundaries are a thing I set for you.
Not for
And
me.
you can't do this. Like, no, no,
Yeah,
no, no,
yeah, yeah,
no.
yeah, yeah.
Like, you don't actually get to control anybody. Boundaries are what I get to say and do. This is what I'm willing to do, or this is what I can do. And if you step over this boundary, then I'm going to
Yeah.
XYZ.
You know, Princess Hemphill, they say that boundaries are the space where I can love, uh, both you and me at the same
At the same
time.
time.
It's that space,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I think also in the conversation is normalizing this awareness that our energy levels shift from day to day. That's
Yeah.
normal. Our
Yes.
energy, we're not gonna be high energy. Like, I was talking with someone the other day, well, yesterday I was really high energy and today I'm really low. I said, "Yeah, isn't that interesting?" Just noticing
Yeah.
that, some days are higher than others. There's nothing wrong, right? It's like it, and so what we do is then we don't operate on those low days at the same level that we'd operate on the day we had high energy.
Yeah.
And so I think there is this push to just it's almost like checking in with yourself throughout the day and like, okay, what is right? And what is my energy level and being able to operate in that and also holding space for other people for it to be okay for them to do that too.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Because I think that's what happens. It really will transform hopefully some of this landscape of burnout and overwhelm when we can begin to view each other
Yeah.
in this way, because then we set a new normal.
Yeah.
We set a new default. We set a new way of just living, like our new perspective on life and what it is, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So that the right now things are saying no and not beating ourselves up for it. uh the medium goals are being more comfortable with our boundaries, and the
Yes.
long-term goals are starting to have conversations now so that expectations change, so that we're not doing this 10 years from now, even a year or two from now.
Yeah. I mean, that's it in a nutshell right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Take that down, folks. Take that down.
Yeah.
This is what we're
That's
working
right.
for.
That's right. So when I was coming up with questions for this conversation, the one I naturally went to at the end of this was kind of like purpose and meaning, and how does that rejuvenate us? And I'm
Yeah.
like, oh, that feels so bleh.
Yeah.
Bleh. And I'm like, I don't think I've ever felt that way about purpose and meaning before. Like purpose and meaning, I feel really strongly about purpose and meaning, and yet in the context of this situation, like even purpose and meaning feel like they've fed into the overwhelm.
Yeah.
It's like, oh well, I just need to find my
I have
purpose or a
showed up.
purpose
I have showed up today for this.
that yeah,
Mission
yeah, yeah.
accomplished.
So like it just feels like a newer space to be in where like yeah, like a life not that there like your life has a singular purpose that you must find and follow. Like no,
Mhm.
that ain't it. Like yeah, there is we can make a purpose or find meaning
Oh, yeah.
in any situation, and that ain't the answer here. Like
Right.
that became super clear. Like that's not the answer here. And for me, it usually that leads me purpose and meaning usually lead me towards like a way of being or a solution, and that ain't it here. So instead of that question, I'm curious, like, so what is your bottom line right now on this conversation? Like what's the like where are you at? Like what's the thing on overload and overwhelm? Like this is my bottom line and I'm sticking to it. That's it. If meaning and
Oh,
overwhelm, I
geez.
mean, if meaning and purpose were usually like that's kind of our my bottom line is like yeah, when I find meaning that's helpful, or when I do something where I feel like when I understand the purpose, it's rejuvenating. If that's not existent here, because even that feels like it's leading towards the spiral. What's the
I think for me right now is like those days where I'm really aware of what I have for today. And
oh
then I honor that and I do that. For me, that at the end of the day, it creates this space of like, wow, I can actually support myself in like navigating this. I can actually um create space for life to like life, right? Instead of
yeah,
like
yeah,
this
yeah,
idea, go, 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 go. And so for me, it's like, sometimes into those days, if you look on paper, oh, I haven't accomplished whatever that looks like, X, Y, and Z. But I have noticed this weird little bird that I've never seen in our yard. Or I
mm,
have uh, created space where I went to the river and had this lovely interaction with someone else who was there. Right. And so
yeah,
it's like, and so for me, the ability to create space where I am able to observe and notice things that I wouldn't normally, I think for me, that's the bottom line goal
yeah,
is noticing those things that so often go unnoticed because I am in that heightened state of do, 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 right?
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, I think it's for me, and that's so simple, right?
It is. It really is. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, and that makes me just think about like, oh, I can just slow down. Like when I
And no
recognize,
one died.
yeah, yeah, right, exactly. I can recognize like what do I have in the tank today? Not what do I think I need in the tank today.
Yeah,
What do I actually have in the tank today? And just slow down.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
I
I love
love
that.
that.
I will. I'm gonna do that. Like right as we're done, I'm just gonna not do the next thing for right now. Awesome. Well, thank you for this conversation.
Yeah.
I think we may have needed it just as much as
It's very
hopefully.
therapeutic. It was
Yeah,
very therapeutic.
it is. And maybe that's it, right? Maybe that's just
Mhm.
the only point of today is a space to have the conversation
Yeah.
for anyone else and everyone else to recognize like, oh, this is a real thing. It's happening. It's not just me. I'm not alone. There's nothing wrong with me. This is how life is showing up right now, and we're going to do something different.
Yeah.
So we are definitely in the in between right now. And we are here with you. And so thanks for being here and listening and tuning in. And we will see you next time here on the in between where shift happens.
Nobody really enjoys being in the in between.
But thanks for being here anyway.
We may not have found all the answers,
But certainly some. And maybe more importantly,
a little shift has happened.
and the beauty of it all is that we are not alone in the in between.
So until next time, we hope a lot of shift happens.